Yeah, thank you, Scott, and good evening, council members and staff. I am going to go over the 2024 audited numbers that we just completed back in this past year. Going to go over year-to-date revenues, and of course, we're going to spend most of the time on the projected proposed revenues and expenditures for 2026.
Would you pull it up to your mouth? I can hardly hear you.
Yes, sir. Can you hear me now? Better? Okay.
A little.
Okay. So I'm going to move along. This slide here shows it's our general fund balance, and it's going to show the number of days on hand as well as what our ending fund balance. And so for the end of the audit year, we ended up at $4,098,000, which is about 292 days worth of fund balance as far as days on hand, cash on hand. So it's about over 10 months that we have that, we had no revenue coming in. We could at least have about 10 months worth of operating. We would be fine, obviously, but then after that, we would not be fine.
Excuse me, I just want to ask one question. Is it the intent to just do through everything, or can we be interactive with this? Or I'm going to
As much as you, this is your workshop. So.
Okay, good. I just want to ask you a question.
Sure.
We don't want to throw you off of the loop, but on that too, you say 292 days of reserves is what you have for the
Yes, sir.
general fund.
Yes.
Okay. What would be in your kind of just world would be a good number? 120?
It's usually about 6 months that we
180?
Well, the question is, what does our policy state?
Okay. Okay. Yes. Does the city have a policy on that?
Yeah, I honestly don't remember if it's 90 or 120, but we generally recommend 120.
I think it's 120.
Yeah, they've always mentioned 120.
Okay, 120.
So we have more than enough.
So I'm not trying to spend all the reserves, but you have roughly twice as many reserves as by policy. So if there were some capital improvements, I know you talked about grants and parlay and things with grants too, but things like that is what we can use for and still be okay.
Correct. And once it's gone, it's gone. And
No, I understand
build that back up. But yes.
I understand that.
Yep.
You don't want to expend it all, but
No.
but hypothetically, 100 days worth of balance could be used.
Correct. Yes, sir.
Okay, thank you.
Depending on what you're facing.
Right. No, I understand. I don't want to take your fund balances and just throw it out for just pie in the sky things. We want to do realistic, good things with it, but and don't want to just use it to balance a budget. But it is something that can be used.
Correct. Yes, sir.
Okay. Thank you.
All right. This next slide is the revenues versus expenditures with transfers. And again, this is year to date. I'm sorry, ending fiscal 2024. So we ended at about 4.6 million without the transfers for 2024. And then, of course, with the transfers, we added about another 441,000 to transfers. So that alone comes up to about 4.6 and 441 as far as total revenue. And then, of course, expenditures was about 5.1. If you remember last year, it was about close to $30,000 that we took out of fund balance overall. So we did very well because there were some expenditures that the council approved that we want to take out of fund balance. And so I think overall we did very well this past year. So.
When
All right,
you say
ne-
past year, are you talking?
This 2024.
Okay.
Yes, sir. Now I'm going to go ahead and move on to the 2025, the current year that we're in. And so these are year-to-date revenues, and these are all as of June 30th. So I took my numbers based on where we're at, not as of today's July, but ending June 30th. So this first slide is the revenue adopted versus actual. If you remember, we adopted a little over 4 million in the general fund, and right now we're already at 4.7 million. And so we've pretty much, already exceeded our adopted budget.
The adopted, it's a full budget adopted, and the revenues is just for the 8 months.
9 months.
9 months.
Yes, sir.
Yeah,
So-
9 months. I'm sorry.
Yes. And so right now we're at about 104% already collected of our total budget.
So you're saying the blue is the entire year?
The blue is the adopted budget.
Yellow
For the-
is where we're at today.
months.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, blue's the entire year, but what you adopted, you anticipated budgeted 4 million, and then you've already exceeded that in the 9
Correct.
months.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
So would it be fair to say keep that plus 4% for the year, not to October, all the way through October?
September. So we have 3 months left. So we've already collected the majority of our property taxes. We have 3 months left to collect from our sales tax. And so, I mean, we're doing very well. And we look at expenditures. We'll talk about that in a minute. But I think right now we're sitting at about 104% collected as of June 30th. And so there's a slide on there that shows kind of more or less what we could end up at. And so we'll go over that in a few minutes.
Okay.
So, okay. So the next slide is the ad valorem taxes. It's going to be budget versus actual.
Can you pause,
Sure.
Mayor?
That way you can say that he's here.
Councilman Mers is here. Councilman Mers is here at 3:39. We just started.
You can-
Okay, so this slide here again it talks about ad valorem taxes, the budget versus actual. We had budgeted almost 1.3 million for ad valorem, and we've already collected 1.312. So we've already superseded what we had anticipated, and right now we're sitting at about 101% collected overall. So we're doing very well on our property taxes, and I don't foresee that increasing even more because we collect the bulk of our taxes in December, January, November, December, and January is when we get the bulk of that tax money in. So. All right.
Should we go over this? Or?
Yeah, that's fine. Go ahead, Scott.
So this just gives you an idea of where we sit for the year in our sales tax collections. There's a couple of different ways we can show this, but what you're looking at in that kind of mauve or pink color, that's your actual receipts. The far left, you'll see what we budgeted. Generally, we look so we look at every month of, for instance, April. We'll look at the month of April. We'll look at every month of April for the time period that we have record, which goes back about 20 years, and we average what amount has been collected historically in that month, and then we try to predict how much we're going to get this year in this April, right? So that's where those budget numbers originally come from. And then you can see how we performed compared to budget. And that far column on the far right where it says percentage change, that's how we perform compared to our budget. So for instance, in that first month, we had a budget of $130,866. We actually received $156,668. And you see all the way over on the right, that's a 15% over and above what we'd anticipated. And you can see month to month, 15%, 10%, 1%, 10%, 57%, down 12, down 7, up 11, up 5. So one of the takeaways, for sales tax is sales tax rarely is consistent, right? And this is true kind of every year we've lived in, if you want to think about it that way. Like the up and down percentages that we get, they don't usually fluctuate by just a couple of percentage points. They're up double digits and sometimes, unfortunately, down double digits, which is why it just makes sales tax a real challenge to be able to forecast. So then when you look at the bottom, you'll see there's a blue, orange, and green. These are just different scenarios to give you an idea. If we were down 5%, meaning based on our budgeted numbers, we collected 5% less than what we're anticipating, that number on the bottom is what we would end up with for the year, the 1,857,317. That's in that first column, down 5%. You compare that to our budget of 1,733,299. We're still above budget by $120,000, even if we finished the year down 5%. Flat is just basically if we just got our budgeted numbers back, and then in green if we finished up 15%. Now this year we've been trending just on average about 8%. Across the board, we've been making, on average, 8% more per month. So a realistic number would be somewhere between, flat and up 15 for the end of the year. But we'll be updating you with the quarterly report or monthly reports that Leroy provides.
In that 57%, just to let y'all know, that was collections for February, which would have been for December sales tax. So like people that shop in December that we collected.
Which would have been old-fashioned Christmas and that stuff.
Yeah.
Yep. Because they're always 2 months behind. So
Walmart?
Christmas shopping,
Christmas shopping.
Oh, yeah.
but you don't get all the sales tax from the Walmart.
this next one, it just shows a different style of graph. It's a line graph. It has a property and sales tax. And again, comparing property versus sales tax. So,
Just kind of gives you an idea of how much we rely on each one. And
all right, so I'm going to go ahead and go on to the forecasted general fund revenues. And now we're going to start talking about proposed for next year. And so we'll spend a little bit more time on this. And so part of the equation to figure out our revenue for this coming year is property values. And so right now we've already we have our preliminary values. We won't get our certifieds until the end of July, and that happens all the time every year. And so we rely right now on our estimated values or preliminary values. And so right now we're sitting at about 375 million for preliminary. When you look at preliminary from last year at this time, we were at 352 million. And so you can see, obviously, it's increased. And of course, this number is going to change because of the protest that's happening right now. So, yes, sir.
Do you have any idea how much of this is to new construction versus just increasing property values altogether?
Scott, do you?
I'd have to look at the breakdown that they gave us. The short answer is we can get that information. We don't have it here, but one of the things they report to us is new construction, the value of new construction.
Yeah.
So we can get that, but I don't know what it is.
Bear in mind that the new construction doesn't hit the tax rolls till the following January after it's completed. So if you completed a house, for example, now, this year, it doesn't hit the tax rolls till January, so you won't see a tax on that till the following year. All right? The way, kind of the way that works, the assessments.
There's a couple of weird things that happen.
Yeah,
There's a prorated
it's kind of strange the
calculation.
way they are.
Yeah, there's a prorated calculation, and then there's a calculation they do for the builders when the home isn't occupied.
Right.
It's built, but it's not occupied. So there's a whole bunch of weird math that goes in when you're looking at new construction. But I would venture to say, Councilman Lee, that most of that is going to be due to your new construction.
Sure.
Because values, just anecdotally looking at our values, the value of the home that we live in, our values haven't increased that much.
Ours actually went down this year.
Mine
Prop-
went up
properties
greatly.
Some of the properties went down in town.
Yeah, River Bluff went up.
Houses went up, but the properties went down.
Yeah.
Go figure.
The land value,
The land value right around here went down,
right?
but the structures went up. But the land values went down here in the middle of town.
Yeah, River Bluff, they went up.
Go figure. I
Yeah,
don't
I know. It's that new math.
This next slide is going to be the actual forecast for this coming up fiscal year. And I'm going to let Scott go over this one because we talked about. Give me 1 second.
What do you want me to do?
This is the other one.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, this is similar. This is going to be similar to the slide you saw a second ago. Only this is what we try to do for a forecast. So again, what we did was figure out, okay, what for the year, if we just try to give our best guess at how much we might get for the year, what is that number? And we basically took what we're anticipating to get at the end of this year and added it or increased it by 5%. That's how we got to the $1,978,294. That's a fairly conservative estimate. Right now, like I said, this year we're averaging an 8% increase year over year. So 5% is somewhat modest, but I think that's about as aggressive as I'd want to be in estimating our sales tax. And then we just, again, build a similar forecast. Like, what would that look like if we were down 5%? So we adopt a budget based on $1,978,000, but then we're down 5% for the whole year. Well, you can see the numbers that we bring in. $1,789,000 would be short by almost $200,000. You go to the right, and okay, what would it look like if we were up 5% for the year, or 10, or 15? And that just gives you, again, an idea of how much extra revenue we might see by the end of the year next year. So this is the chart that Leroy will update throughout the year. So we take this, once it's adopted, and this is what goes into the budget, and he begins putting the actuals in. And when he reports back to the council, you'll start seeing the actuals compared to what we budgeted, and you can track for yourself kind of what the percentage, how close were we?
So which column do you use for your budget as you projected? So
Far left.
the lower one?
The budget, the white
Not
one,
the lowest one.
the non-highlighted.
The far left, the 1.9.
Yeah.
Yeah.
1,978,294. That would be our, that's what we're recommending, if you
Sure.
will, as our adopted budget for sales tax revenues for fiscal year 25-26.
And unlike what I was saying with property tax and sales tax, we had if, for example, we had a commercial boom, those sales taxes are immediate.
Yes,
Okay, they're not waiting for
correct.
City
Yes.
property taxes. Okay, okay.
But we're riding a 4% increase now. We sustain that next year.
So
Well, that's all I'm asking is the sales tax is a tricky one because a lot of the growth on that's depending on your commercial growth too, or increased traffic and the whole 9 yards. So, okay, thank you.
So
Sure.
So this is a breakdown of the proposed revenues. So we have our sales tax of 1.982, even though we had said it was 1.978, I believe, but this includes the liquor tax of about $4,000. So our proposed revenue for this coming year would be 1.982 on the sales tax portion. The property taxes, again, it'd be about 1.389. Then we have our court revenue, about 437,000. Parks and Rec, about 333,000. And then other revenue would be about 533,000. So total operating revenues that we're projecting or proposing is about 4.676. That's before the transfers in. With the transfer in of about 451,000, it brings it up to about 5.1 million in proposed revenues.
Okay, hold on a second. I just want to touch base really quick
Sure.
on the $250,000 increase in municipal court. More citations, more criminals, more municipal violations.
Yes, sir.
I think we talked before. You guys now have 2 court dates.
We have 2 court dates starting in April. We started going twice a month because the need was there. We have them twice a month, and both those dockets are always very high, and that's just the way it is, unfortunately.
The budget, I understand, it's a tough one because you really, honestly, you'd like the number to be 0. You want everybody to follow the rules,
Right.
but
right.
realistically, it doesn't happen. So, yeah. Okay.
Yes,
Thanks.
sir.
I
Mr.
have a
Lee.
number of questions on this one. Municipal court, I noticed further along, you got an increase of over $100,000 in prosecutor fees.
Correct.
Okay, so that wipes out a good part of that, doesn't it?
Right.
And
Yeah, it's supposed to be self, so the idea is we're not trying to make money on the municipal court,
Right.
but it needs to pay its own way. In the past, it wasn't even paying its own way.
this,
Now it's doing more than that.
okay, this is after the state gets their cut.
Correct. Yes, sir.
Okay, and so the question comes up, are we doing more patrolling on Highway 90, which is why those figures are up? Because we've gone through a couple of cycles here. We did tons of 90. We've got a great reputation as a speed trap over the years. And we were wearing cars out like crazy, which cost us $50,000, $60,000 a pop. And so, yeah, you get a lot of tickets and you pay a lot to your prosecutor. But when the bottom line comes in, you really weren't doing that well. You see
Right.
what I'm saying?
Right.
The numbers look good, but when it got down to dollars that are left over, what I'm spending to get there, it wasn't necessarily that attractive. And so as we go through this and you ask for more money for a prosecutor and so forth, I need to have an understanding as to, are we spending a whole lot of money to get a little bit more money or what? And, what
Well-
the policy is in order to make all that function.
If I may, from the staff perspective,
Yeah.
this is not about revenue. This is about public safety.
Right.
First and foremost,
And compliance.
we are seeing some more activity, but again, it's not revenue motivated. There are two principal reasons, and Chief, correct me if I misspeak, but one is the Project Stone Garden, right? Do we have someone participating or not now? So Stone Garden
Stone Garden
is
grant.
a project that's really focused on safety, and it's a grant funded project out of the state. So they pay our overtime, et cetera. Well, they pay for the officer, but then whatever the officer does during that time, it gets dealt with by our court. So you're seeing increased activity because of that. And then the other reason is we got a COPS grant, and the COPS grant helped pay for 2 fully funded police positions, which are out doing more patrol, but
Correct.
Comment.
The Operation Stone Garden, we received about $38,000, I believe, and right now we're sitting at only $11,000 left out of that budget. We've also taken part of Operation Lone Star. The state is still going through to see how much funds we're getting from there. As Mr. Dixon said, we're fully staffed for the first time in a long, long time. And the officers are working 90. And I can assure you that I probably, not recently, but probably in the last 4 or 5 months, I approved most of those citations. These people need to slow down. They absolutely need to slow down.
Yeah, they're double digits, right?
A lot of them are double digits, and people just don't get it. They just don't understand the slowing down. And it's obvious. I actually had the radar trailer put out there on 90, and I told the officer to go sit behind it and see what the speed was. And the first one out of the box was 18 over after he passed the speed limit sign. Trailer.
40-mile-an-hour section.
Yes, sir.
So he's doing almost 60.
so he's already been told by a trailer that's lit up and told,
Yes.
hey, you're going 20 over.
Flashing red and blue.
And that's even with the giant private sign on the side of the road that says speed trap.
You're exactly right.
You probably like that. I do.
Anyway, so I just want to be clear. Our goal is not. While I do have a general principle that I would like to see the municipal court self-fund, like we should not be subsidizing the municipal court, which is what we were doing post-COVID. This community, when I came on board, was basically subsidizing the municipal court to the tune of $20,000 to $60,000 a year, roughly, and that really shouldn't be the case. Your court should be able to. You should have enough tickets, if you will, revenue to justify the people that you are employing in the court, or you need to scale back or something. Now it's the reverse, as you've seen, Councilman Lee. We have now we have one. There is some subsidy. Our court is kicking off additional revenue. Again, we're not trying for that, but that's what's happening. And the costs have gone up considerably at the court because, yes, we're meeting twice a month now. We've got prosecutors' time. We've got the judges' time. We've got additional personnel in court. But and I don't know. One of the other difficulties from a budgetary standpoint is how long will this be the case? Is this going to be the norm now going for the future years? Maybe. We are growing as a community. There's a lot more traffic on 90, and that's not going to go down. The traffic counts are only going to go up. Like today, the sad part is today is the day the fewest number of cars are driving on 90. This is the fewest number you're going to see today. Tomorrow, and the next day, and the next year, they're just going to go up. So I'm afraid that's going to become a challenge for the city because of space issues and other challenges that go along with the court. But we could be in this scenario, but we're going to just play it by ear. And my thought is, this year, and we'll see how this next year goes and see if this is the new norm. Yes, sir.
Well, and to the chief, as that traffic grows, isn't there a relationship between that and the number of tickets you got to write, where you can project that?
Basically, what you do is,
90 won't matter.
as the traffic count goes up, we're still out there patrolling.
Right.
It doesn't coincide with each other. It's just a matter of
The more people, the more speeders.
usually,
Until
unfortunately.
they turn into bumper to bumper, and then there's no one
Yeah.
speeding.
Yes, sir.
They're working on the lights at the bridge.
Well, keep in mind the other issue that we're ticketing for is cut through. There's been a major increase in people cutting through. Not just now. It's not just through
Country Village.
Country Village on the north side, but they're doing it on the south side too.
Oh, yeah.
And so that's been a constituent or citizen complaint, is to address that. So we've been working to address that as well. Constance, it's not all on 90.
No.
I mean, you've seen the radar sign get put up on some of the other
Fiorello.
places in town. And that's in a direct response to the types of issues that the chief gets, concerns he gets from citizens, where they've requested to have that radar trailer set up. And then that comes with additional enforcement.
We have a non-functional radar trailer at the sewer plant, correct? I saw it up there a couple weeks ago.
No, I think the last one, sir, was, you got at the airport or something?
No, this one was parked up at the.
No,
top
it may
of the sewer
be, up there. You may not be aware, but I think there is an older one that was bought
Well, I just wonder if we could
years
use
and
it.
years and years ago.
Exactly.
Speed trap.
We've done that before.
I can look
We put unoccupied cars alongside the road with something in them to make it appear there was an officer there, huh?
We're way off the rails.
Anyway,
Back in
all right,
Florida.
you're giving me way more information than I wanted. Thank you.
And every month in the finance report, we do give a breakdown of the court citations,
Yeah.
just as a FYI.
Parks and Revenue was my other one. Are you telling me we bring in $333,000 in revenue from the parks?
We do not, no, sir. But we break it down.
That's the way I read that sign up there.
That is correct.
There's
And
revenues on the top.
right, we'll go over that in a few minutes if that's okay. Can I go ahead and continue? We'll come back to that.
Okay.
Okay. All right. So overall, it's about 5.1 million in total revenue, proposed revenue that we are anticipating for next fiscal year. This year alone, we anticipate about 4.7 in our current year. So that's the breakdown between sales tax, property taxes, and so forth. So is there any questions besides Mr. Lee's question before I move on? Yes, sir.
So on 24, it says 5.1, and you're thinking we're giving it 4.7. Is that what you mean?
Yeah. So in fiscal year 2024, what was audited, we ended up at 5.1, almost 5.2 roughly. And so
That had other revenue of 905,000.
I was going to ask you about that
Yes.
$400,000 extra in revenues.
those are one-time revenues that we would bring in or got in that we received that we're not getting in this year or even next year. And so that's why you see those are different. They'll always be different. So
Thank
I do have one question on transfer. Is the actual money that's coming out of utility fund different in these years, or my understanding was we're now paying some of the staff that handles issues for the utility
that's correct.
out of utility funds, but we're not counting it as a transfer, correct?
That's correct. Yes, sir.
Okay, so my question is the actual money that's transferred out of the utility fund to the general fund, and that's about the only other one that we get it, to cover salaries, does that actually make the amount of money coming out of the utility fund about the same
About the same as what?
as when you didn't separate it into two different? You see, you've got 747,000 approved for this year, and you have proposed next year 451. Are you going to be taking $300,000 less out of utility fund for whatever reason, to pay salaries or anything else than you are this year?
So
No.
go ahead.
Yeah, so you won't see that number reflected in here. It's baked into their cost, but there is a total. It's about $254,000 that are in salaries that utilities pay, and that's pretty consistent. Been pretty consistent the last 2
Outside
years.
of the utility fund.
No, outside of this transfer. So this transfer represents does it have any debt service in it, or is it all,
The 747. Which one?
well, it's the same numbers, transfers in, that line item, the one that
Right,
says
but if we look at
451 for proposed.
No, that 451 is the franchise fee and the utility right away.
Right.
Yep.
So there's only two items, I'm just making this clear. There are only two items in this year's proposed transfers from utility fund, and that's your right-of-way maintenance. The utilities pay for right-of-way. That's where your general fund receives the money to go and mow the rights of way. And it's around 200 or 100, I can't remember, it's 175,000 for that.
I think so. Yeah.
Something like that.
Mhm.
That gets charged there's a percentage that gets charged to each utility to help maintain the right-of-ways.
It's 170 actually.
What?
170.
170? Yeah, so I was thinking. Okay, so it's 170. And then the other is the franchise fee. And the franchise fee, we charge the utilities 3.5% of their gross revenue.
I'm not saying I'm against any of that. I think it makes sense. I just want to understand if what's coming out of the utility fund, in years past, we took
It was one big
$250
transfer.
million.
Yeah.
Came
It's
into the
less
general
today
fund
than it
and
used to be.
went to various places.
Yeah, so it's less today than it used to be. It depends on the year. Yeah,
I kind of went up and down.
Well,
Yeah.
we've kind of gone full circle because years ago, it was a flat amount plus all the expenditures that were put in there. Then that was, a council went through and says, wait a minute, we want to see it all. So we grouped it all into one, and then the general fund divided it amongst the general fund. So that's where we got to 800, almost $1 million transfer. And now we broke it back out to a franchise fee, a cost for the streets, and then the admin cost is paid in salaries.
Right.
Because either way, it still comes out to the
Yeah,
same
I
thing.
don't
It's
have
just,
an issue.
it's similar,
just how
I
it's
don't
worked out.
understand it, because there were some
Yeah.
salaries up here you did in the last budget presentation, and the question goes, is that all you're paying that person? Well, no, it isn't. There's some of it come from whatever else. And so I said, well, I'd like to see, actually, regardless whether it comes from utility fund as a franchise fee and support the general fund, or it comes out of general fund, property taxes, sales tax, show me the total and help me to understand. You know,
Sure.
You said, sure, we can do that.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah, we did prepare just a percentage so you can see by position how much the ones that are shared, how much gets paid by who, right? But we can give you the full.
So it's a 3.5% franchise fee plus a fee for street maintenance,
For right-of-way maintenance.
for
Right,
right-of-way
right.
maintenance. Okay.
And I
Okay.
think that
Okay.
fee has
Okay.
been pretty static for
Okay.
a long time.
Yeah.
That amount. I've considered, we've talked about whether to increase it or not, and we just haven't, in part because of the conversation you and I had about
Sure.
the utilities and where they are from a financial health standpoint. I don't,
Right.
I don't
No, I understand.
want to put additional pressure on them. We don't have to. But we have also looked at maybe outsourcing that right-of-way maintenance, paying a third party to do it, which would free, because we have three guys. It's our streets department that does that. And I haven't sought bids to see what that would cost, but that would be another way to handle that, is just to have a third party do it and
So,
pay them directly.
Does the general fund receive a 3% franchise fee from CPS for the customers within our city limits?
I think we actually receive, it's either 3.5 or 4.5.
Okay, and they pay us the franchise fee on
Correct.
all the customers
Correct.
in the city limits?
Not in the city limits, no. In their, I'm sorry, yes.
Yes.
In our city limits where we
Yeah,
don't
they,
have the.
where they provide service in our city limits.
Yes,
They pay a
yeah.
franchise.
So Walmart and the areas.
We
near
get a
there.
small franchise fee off the phone bills because
Correct.
you look at your phone bill, it's a franchise fee in there.
Correct.
Anybody that's providing a service, the general fund gets to collect a franchise fee on.
Correct. The general fund receives.
General
that.
fund.
Yeah.
General fund.
Mayor,
Yes. Yes.
I don't know if you were, if you were out.
Right.
We did contract all that mowing you're talking about before,
Mhm.
along the right of ways, the streets, the everything, and it turned out to be a disaster. Well, it caused us a lot of problems. There's a lot of issues that came out of that. So, when we looked at the final figures, it was actually less expensive for us, and we had the additional manpower on hand to handle emergency transfers out, training programs, and so it gave us a more robust
Yeah, there's a reason I haven't.
Works department in order to handle issues.
Yeah, there's a reason I haven't looked at it, because I just. Yeah, I don't think it would be fruitful to do, but.
When I came on council, we were paying McVeigh $60,000
Yes,
a
sir.
year,
Yes,
all
sir.
inclusive.
Yes,
Do
sir.
all in all.
Mhm.
And then Public Works Director time said, if we do that in-house, then we can add one additional person, part-time. And of course, it didn't include the truck, didn't include the trailer. They were going to buy one more, but now we have multiple more. So it's cost a lot more, but I think we didn't realize. Lynn didn't get everything every month, but so it was a little bit behind all the time. But it was $60,000 a year, so it was dirt cheap compared to what we're paying
Well,
now.
yeah, that was a few years ago. And when it's dry,
10
one
years
problem.
ago.
When it's wet, another problem.
Yeah, and I don't know. Again, I haven't bothered to go out because for a number of reasons. I think we are benefited by having our staff. I would like to have our staff freed up to do other things. Frankly, right now, for instance, they need to be out mowing, but they're doing the drainage channel because they're also the guys that do the drainage. So, and that takes higher priority at the moment. And when the wastewater treatment plant pond issue is being, they're the ones that are going to be doing that. So. That's the challenge, is we just don't have a very deep bench to do everything that needs to be done.
All right, so those are the revenues. So we're going to go now over expenditures. So we're going to take it line by line, if that's okay. Excuse me. So the first one is city council. There's the proposed allocation for expenditures is $66,646, and that's a decrease of about 9,000, almost 10,000 from the prior year. And this is why, because we reduced the technology budget down from 9 to 5,000. Right now, everyone has tablets, the Surface tablets, so there was no need to continue with that same allocation every year on the technology piece, as well as the travel and training. The city administrator, proposed is 183, 384 compared to the 232. And that reason is because we took the interim, the intern position out of this proposed budget, and we also reduced the city attorney fees. And so there's a reduction there.
Well, I want to ask you a question.
Sure.
The $50,000 reduction in attorney fees, that's pretty significant.
It's not just
Is that-
attorney fees. It includes the intern position along with the attorney fees. That totals about 50,000.
Okay, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
I was just
Intern
reading.
it's probably split almost half.
Okay.
It's about 25 of
Okay,
these.
Yeah.
okay. Well, that's good.
So
And
exactly,
I reduced the attorney fees in part because we aren't
Pardon me?
here anymore.
Oh, no, I understand. Good. Thank you.
the city administrator line item covers exactly what? Obviously, you said attorney fees. Is that
Yeah.
all attorney fees or just some?
No, it's just some of them, and that's one of the challenges. Is there's a lot of stuff that's in administration that does it. That it's not necessarily mine, but it's in my budget.
I think the buck stops there.
Yeah, I'd
Well,
like to understand exactly what's happening.
So I'll-
with different ones.
One of the things that you have access to, and I'll show this to y'all in a minute when he's done with his, but y'all have access to our working documents already. They've been in that you may not have realized you had it, but every year you have access to these. Those who are new on council, again, you haven't seen this before, but on the team site, all of the budget information, not just for this budget, but for prior budgets, the Excel files that we use to build your budget is all out there. So you can see every line item. I generally we don't try to focus on line items. We try to keep the conversation at the policy level, but we also don't want to either be accused of not being transparent or, we don't want to hide anything from you all. So you all have access to all the line item budgets. And I would recommend if you have those types of questions, look at them and then let me know which ones you're interested in. They're just numbers on a sheet, right? So you won't necessarily know what those numbers go for. You might be looking at something that
I'll
says
just
$40,000. Yeah.
I'm
So
not
when
gonna
you
look
get
at it.
into there and you find something you want to know more about, just let me know and we can pull the account code and tell you here's who gets paid out of that, right? But that'll give you some of your answers that you're looking for, Bob.
So the next one is city secretary. There's a slight, about a 3% increase, and that is we created a new line item for open records requests. Correct, Deborah? As well as the
We also have records retention.
Yes.
This year,
The other name.
Digitalization.
pardon?
Digitalization.
No.
that was
Records
a.
retention. That's good.
Go ahead.
The records retention is where they come in and categorize our records, and we do it every 2 years. This year, we didn't get to do it because we couldn't coincide with their schedule and our schedule. And so we just, I say basically moved it to this next year, and they'll come in October and do that. And so it runs around, somewhere around 4,000.
4,000. Yeah.
And then we also put this line item in for the open records because he was getting it, because we got a bigger, much larger increase now that we have to send off
Well,
to attorneys. And
Just let me ask you a question.
AG
When you
opinion.
get an open records request, do you generally just forward them to the attorney?
not all of them, no. Especially a lot of ours right now that I do send up, depends on what it is.
Yes,
If
ma'am.
it's a very large one, or the body cameras have
Yes, ma'am.
become very popular with people that get stopped.
I'm sure.
And so some of them we have to have them review it. Now, it may not always go to the AG, but we have to look at to see what we can redact
Yes,
or
ma'am.
not. And so we've had a lot of activity on that recently. So
Thank you.
depends.
The next one is sorry. The next one is finance, and there's about a 6% increase, and that's due to we have a position that's split funded between finance and court, and so court's paying about 75% of that salary, and I'm paying the other 25%, and so that's why there's an increase there. For library, there's a slight about a 1% reduction, and it was the travel and training as well as computer maintenance for the library. For police, there was a 13% increase, and that was for the license plate reader cameras. And then, of course, bringing all the starting pay for police officers to $65,000. And so we definitely want to, retain our officers. And
Let me ask you a question on that,
Sure.
and I fully support that, but I want to make sure I say this the right way.
Mm-hmm.
So you're taking your lowest paid officer and putting them at 65, and everybody else gets an equal for pay differential bump? Is that the plan, Chief? I'm okay with that, but I just wanted to ask that.
The plan is to bring everybody up to 65. We're really close.
Sure.
Getting people there. And I think looking at that is just bringing everybody up to there. Pretty much as I look, I only have a few officers that have less than 5 years. Most of them have, 10, 15 years on.
Sure.
But I do have some lower ones that are close to 60. And I looked at about probably 6 or 7 agencies in the San Antonio Metroplex area, starting pay, which varies significantly.
Right.
And just hit in the middle about
But
that.
you follow my question, the
Yes, sir.
pay differential?
They don't get any paid differential. They get the holiday pay. They get the pay differential in their.
What I meant is if a guy's just right at 65 and this one may be at 55, are everybody going to get that bump?
Everybody's gonna get bumped to 65.
That's,
Yes, sir.
okay, so anyone that's at that doesn't get an extra bump?
No, sir. No,
Okay,
sir. This,
that was
it's
my
equal
question.
playing field.
Okay, okay. All right, well, you're a good guy. Huh?
I'll bet that went over well for the guy that was already at 60.
They were actually, believe it or not, I had an outstanding group.
Yeah, I know you do.
They really don't.
Well, I just want to be fair to them all, fair to you and fair to your officers. Yes, sir.
Been there longer, they get more pay.
Okay, okay.
And we did this when they were only making 27,000.
I mean, I would be okay with that. I just want to let
We
you
were
know.
losing them like crazy for the same reason, and so we said, everybody's gotta go here, but then the guys that already been here a couple of years, the new guy was gonna be making more than, so we had to, make an incremental adjustment. What does a starting electrician make here?
19.
What?
This-
Lineman?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's $19 an hour.
Well, how much?
But that's
The
not-
average in the state is $38 an hour.
How much a year does that figure out?
38.
And I'm asking
60
in
hours.
relation to the policeman, huh?
60 hours a year.
Anybody have an answer?
28.
About
38.
28.
38,
Pay what
39.
2080.
You mean, they're not electricians, they're power.
Well,
They're
okay,
linemen.
They're like,
okay, well, it's the one
39.
that we're short of.
Yeah,
well, it
39.5.
depends if they're
yeah,
journeyman.
Yeah, 39.
without
Okay,
benefits.
whatever
40.
you wanna call them.
Yeah.
They work with electricity for sure.
There's
So what-
steps.
It's about 40,000 without benefits.
We gotta fix that.
Right.
And that's usually, that's kind of where our lowest paid
Sure.
is.
That's your entry level.
Your entry level is at 40.
Your public works entry level.
That's $19 an hour. And we actually start people at 15, but if they're going to be a full-time permanent employee of the city, generally I try to get them to 19, no matter where their position is in the city, as quickly as we can, because I know that frankly, if you're a breadwinner at home and you're making less than $40,000 a year, you're not going to keep that person.
Mm-hmm.
So we try to
Yes.
rethink it
To
how.
increase it.
You told me we're short 3 people. I mean.
Oh, no, we're not. We don't have any. We actually have filled all our positions.
The last meeting, we were short.
Yeah, I know. And we're already, we filled 2 in between last meeting and
Didn't-
today.
Okay, I've seen this movie before, just like has happened with the police department. And so if we need to ensure we can keep a steady group of well-qualified people on the utility side, which keeps the infrastructure working in the city, I think we need to see if that might be worth considering raising that starting pay.
And Scott, didn't you and Leroy go through a recent kind of salary comparison, survey to see where we're at and try to adjust that?
We did. It's been a couple of years since we conducted a salary survey, but yeah, we've been getting some really good intel because we've had a number of open positions that have been helping us understand where we are for market. So, for instance, that we are not using that salary survey to determine what the pay are the electric linemen. We've been using
I understand.
real-time information on how many applicants we're getting and the quality of applicants we're getting, et cetera.
Sure.
And we gradually increased what we were offering for the positions until we got good candidates. So I think it depends on the position, but I think for the electric crew anyway, we've made the right adjustments from a pay standpoint to get where we need to be to get the right people. Same thing with gas. We took on the gas system. We didn't really have a concept for what we should be paying. And we learned by trial and error as we posted positions and got feedback.
So, thank you.
The next line item is court, and it's about 127% increase. I know that's a lot when you compare this year to next year, but the fact that we're having court twice a month, we're adding that other position that's split funded between finance and court, as well as having to pay the judge now twice a month versus just once a month, and then of course the prosecutor pay as well. And so, but this is offsetting with revenue because we're collecting more revenue than what we're going to be spending. So, yes, it's a big increase, but it's offsetting. So, The next one is community development. It's about a 12% increase. She's increasing her engineering services and contracted services. But again, this is a pass through with revenue. Right now, she's already exceeded that revenue that was anticipated, and I have that for you. That I can give you. So for permits and fees, we budgeted $240,000, and we've already collected almost $395,000 just in permits and fees. So it's a pass through. So on her. The next one is going to be streets. It's a 6% decrease. That's because we split funded those positions between gas and streets because they're helping out with gas, and so that's why you see that decrease in streets. And so the next one would be parks and rec. It's about a 7% increase, and that's just due to salaries and benefits, as well as miscellaneous park improvements and building repairs and maintenance and so forth. And so that would be parks. RV park is about a 6% increase, and we increase repairs and maintenance and ground maintenance for the RV park. Swimming pool is about a 3% decrease, and Jonah, decreased the repairs and maintenance on the pool for pool. Animal services and code compliance or code enforcement. That's an extra personnel increase. Position came from the PD, went over to the animal control, and so that's why there's an increase there. Yes, sir.
What's the income on the RV park
Um,
revenue? We looked at this several years ago, whether it actually made sense to keep the RV park open.
Right now, what we have budgeted is 175,000, and we've already collected almost 90,000, and that's as of the end of June. So we have about 3 months remaining as far as collections, and so we're about 51% collected. We should probably be about 75.
And the difference, I heard 100 and something, and then
175 is what was budgeted, and we've already collected almost 90,000 of that.
So we're
today.
a little under collecting, if you want to think about it that way. Like we should be a little further ahead than we are right now based on our budget.
okay.
And we budgeted less next year for that reason.
Yeah.
Part of the issue has been because of the construction of the demolition of that building. When that building was demolished, it demolished the Wi-Fi. The Wi-Fi for the RV park
Really?
was being supported by the pool building that was demolished. So that has been a detractant. We have Wi-Fi there.
Yeah.
I don't want to make there is Wi-Fi, but it's not nearly as good as it used to be.
Yeah.
So not strangely, but I mean, it's just interesting that something so small can have such a major impact. But I think that's been one of the main reasons why it's been difficult to keep that place full. Once the new building is in place and that a stronger regular signal is there, I think that business will return. But in answer to your question, Councilman Lee, at least if you're looking for advice from the staff, I think we would recommend keeping the RV park. It has been a good source of revenue to offset what is typically a completely subsidized department, if you will. Like, parks usually doesn't have revenue to speak of in any real quantity. But the fact that you have an RV park out there, it has been beneficial to the park to be able to help pay for some of their costs. That said, there's been a lot of discussion over the last 4 years that I've been here with, well, do we increase it? The RV park, meaning, do we make it bigger and better? Do we make it more like a professional RV park? And I think the consensus from the Parks Board and the constituents that use the park has been a resounding no, that this is a regional park first and an RV park third or fourth. And we're okay with having an RV park here, but we don't want it to be an RV park. We want it to be the regional park with the convenience of for some people who want to stay in an RV, they can stay here. So that's been for your benefit. I mean, that ultimately it's your decision what you do with the city's assets. But that's been kind of the anecdotal response that we received as we've investigated or talked about what to do. That said, we would like to see some minor improvements to the RV park, and Jonah and his staff were doing some of those, but it does take money and time and resources, and that was one of the things that we cut out of this budget. Jonah and I had talked about doing some additional spaces and improvements and what that would cost and what it would take, and ultimately he put the numbers together, which I appreciate. But then when it came to trying to make things work, my eraser erased a lot of the work that he had done. because we couldn't afford it.
You're telling me we make about 50 a year, is that what you're telling me?
50,000? No, you make like,
Right now we're at
180.
90,000 as of today.
How much?
90,000 just for the RV park alone. Yes,
that's
sir.
just through today, but normally, in a normal year, you'll,
I'm looking at
It's about 40,000. The total budget for RV is about 45,000, 44,000. The R Peak rentals that we've already brought in is at 90,000. And so when you compare that to the expenditures, okay, we've already exceeded that. We've already brought in more revenue than what we spent.
yeah, typically you clear, in a good year when there's not other things going on, like a new construction of a building, you'll clear $120,000 or more out of that RV park.
That's about 3 times more than
Now,
we've done for.
in the past,
For the same number of spaces.
the city did have, the RV park was a loser, but my review of that situation is that there was theft almost certainly going on, because
I suspected that there was.
there's, and again, I'm not trying to,
Okay,
it's not accusing,
my
but
question.
that's what I would assume, just looking at numbers. If you just
Okay.
looked at the past audits and looked at where we are today without making any changes, we went from being like in the hole to being, in the black by
I
tens
have
of thousands.
I have a
of dollars.
question on animal services and code enforcement. How many people are in that?
3.
3 and they want another one?
Well, no. It's 3 total. So there was a position from police department that we brought over to animal code compliance this year. And so that wasn't budgeted this year. And so next year, we got to make sure we budget for that
So
position.
this year, that position's paid for through the police department?
Up until she moved, yes.
So
It's all general
so-
funds, so.
Oh, no, I understand this. I'm just, so you have 2 code enforcement officers and 1 animal control, or they're all code enforcement?
They all
And
3
animal control.
do the same
They're all
thing,
both.
right, Chief?
Dual trained,
They're all dual?
dual trained, one of them's in training. right
Okay.
now, but then they will become-
Just set away.
Okay,
Yeah.
wonderful. Thank you. Thank you.
And I honestly, if I were to look at that department, I think you're going to need, just looking at the expansion of the city, code compliance is less of an issue in newer subdivisions of the type that are going to be built here. Not to say there won't be any code compliance concerns, there will be some, but your animal services will actually be in higher demand in a new subdivision. That's if you're to look at like demand for service,
Right.
I expect the demand for animal services to go up more relative to your code compliance. So I think in the future, potentially, if this is something the council supports, you will probably want to have 2 dedicated code or animal service officers
Mhm.
and 1 or maybe 2 code compliance officers. And that'll have to 1 to 1.5, if you will, code
Well,
compliance.
your animal control officer, they're all certified. And then, of course, a lot of folks may or may not fully understand the role of the code enforcement officer. It's health and sanitation is primarily their goal. And a lot of things fall into that, like the
Yeah.
weeds, the junk vehicles, the things like that, but not building inspections.
Yeah, they are not they're not an HOA.
Nope.
They really are about health and safety
Yep.
generally. So anyway.
Okay. Thank you.
Yes, sir.
I
The
have
ne-
a
oh,
question about
I'm sorry.
10 slides ago.
I apologize.
About you showed revenue from the parks. You said you were going to explain that.
we're going to go back to that in a little bit. Can I
Okay,
finish this?
you're gonna bring it up
Yes.
later.
Yes, sir.
All right, good. Thank you.
The next one is tourism and business development. So you'll see like a 30% decrease, but that's because we're going to reclassify those funds over to the hotel motel fund, and it's about 77,000, and those are restricted funds. So out of those funds, it's for advertising, it's for professional services, and buildings and maintenance fees. So we can use those funds under the hotel motel funds. Right now, they're in the general fund. And so after we met with our auditor last year, she had recommended, hey, next year moving forward, you may want to move those expenses back over to the hotel motel funds. That's why you see that big decrease in his budget. So
What were you charging to
right now they're in the general fund.
them? What
We're
were
gonna
you charging
move.
against hot tax?
They're gonna move over to the hotel motel funds.
Okay, but you were charging it against that with other things?
No, we moved. Originally they were.
Yeah,
And about
that's
2
what
years
I'm
ago,
saying.
we brought them back to the general. We brought them to the general fund.
Okay, okay.
And now we got to move a portion back to the hotel motel funds because that's really what they're used for. And so
Right.
after
Well,
meeting with the auditor, she said,
Right. Well, years ago,
yeah,
the city used to, I'm going back, way back, they gave the monies to the chamber. Chamber took care of all the travel, tourism and everything. Then the city said, we want a piece of that, so they kept 25% back, and we bought flags and
Okay.
events that brought people to town. 4th of July, we paid for things with that. And then over time, I guess the city recaptured it all and said, we'll do it ourselves.
Yeah.
So,
Chamber wanted to move out and move into their own building.
Exactly.
Well,
They didn't want to do it.
and just to be clear, so the reason we're doing, you see this change is it's
I was just curious.
it's a direct result of
Sure.
our audit.
I understand.
The way we were doing things was fine, but what we were doing was we were expensing things from the general fund and then having the hot fund make the general fund whole
Got it.
on the items that legitimately can be paid by the hot fund.
Right.
And what our auditor recommended is just expensing those directly to hot
Make it clean.
and not
Yeah.
doing it.
Clean it up.
And
Yeah.
either way it works, but
Sure.
that's just what she recommended, so that's what we're doing.
Sure.
The next one is the EDC budget. It's about an 18% decrease, and we're just reducing the travel and training, as well as meeting expenses. IT, there's about a 1% increase, and that was for computer software and the website fee for Civic Plus.
The city pays $200,000 for IT services?
Yes, sir.
To VC.
When I want you to know, when I
VC.
That's
polled
the
my-
VC3 folks?
Yes, sir.
Yeah. When I polled the cities that we I asked all the cities in San Antonio, my regional
Sure,
manager group,
no.
I asked them about IT before we went out to VC3. Some of the council may remember this, and I asked them what they were spending, and because at the time we were looking at setting up our own IT. The council was wanting us to look at that.
Right.
The cities that had internal IT were spending, and I did it on a per capita basis, like how many employees do they have?
Yes.
How many dollars were they spending per employee? And I'm going to make up numbers, but the folks that had internal IT departments on average were spending $24 per employee. That's a made up number.
No, I know.
Compared to the people who were outsourcing, depending on who they were outsourcing to, were spending $7 or $8.
Sure.
And when I looked at our contract with HDS at the time, and then this new one with VC3 was one of the more expensive options that came forward, but it was the one that ultimately the council selected. But even at what we're paying now, compared to other cities, it's pretty inexpensive.
Well, I mean, I know it's expensive. I know what I deal with on the other end. I just wanted to ask that.
Well, I'm just saying it's pretty inexpensive.
Are we on
believe it
a
or not.
long-term contract with them?
No. We are a couple of years into what is either a 3 or 5 year contract,
Okay.
so it's not long. I wouldn't consider it long term.
Okay,
Yeah.
thank you.
Yeah, I think it was 5 years that we did.
Okay.
And
I think you're right.
so you're only showing a 1% increase on IT
Yes.
with everything we've got going on.
We're doing a lot of it this year.
Uh-huh.
New servers this year, updates to Windows 11 that's taking place this year.
We're buying a bunch of laptops, a
Mhm.
bunch of computers that have to be purchased. The computers the hardware is no longer compatible
Right.
with Windows. We're taking care of that this year.
Okay.
Is Encode in here? Is the police software in here?
No, that's under a different. Inco's under a different department. It's in that non-departmental.
Thank you.
So the next one for expenditures is non-departmental, and that covers our risk management, our TML insurance, our copier services, our ADP, AdCom, the kiosk, and so forth. It's those type of
Got
expenditures that fall under here. So overall, there's a 3% cost of living inside for salaries. And so when you compare our current 2.9 million that was budgeted for salaries compared to the proposed at 3.2, it's about $384,000 that we're proposing just for salaries. One thing that we haven't received yet from our third-party administrator for our benefits is the health insurance as far as a premium. And so we won't get those until sometime towards the end of the month. And so then there may be an increase, possibly there may not. And so if that does, we'll come back and let you know what that increase is.
Do you know what just a swag, what your average increase has been?
Well, this is our first year with Curative
Okay.
compared to we were with TML Health, Blue Cross Blue Shield for many, many years. And so this year, since this is our first year, we don't really know yet.
Okay.
So there may be a slight increase.
Fair
Right
enough.
now,
Fair
the last time I looked, we were running really, really well as far as utilization. So the way insurance companies the way they decide how much to charge you next year, it's based on your utilization.
Right.
They want you to be below 40%. Just as kind of an aside, when we went out to Curative, we were at like 16% utilization. We were really, really low. It made us very attractive. We got excellent rates. We saved a lot of money when we switched. I say a lot. It was about $120,000, I believe. It's my recollection. This year, we were below that 40% threshold every month except for 1 or 2. So I would think that we're going to get a fairly competitive reinsurance rate. So frankly, I'm anticipating between 0 and 5% increase.
Just out of curiosity, it's 100% to the employees?
Yes, sir.
Pay anything for
Paid by the employer. I'm sorry?
anything for dependents?
They do offer dependent insurance, but we don't, they pay out of
The
pocket for
city
that.
pays the employee portion.
Correct. Yes, sir.
Got it. Okay, good enough. Thank you.
The tourism position is just one person, correct?
Correct.
It's actually one
I'm sorry,
person
Betty.
and half a person. The Steinbach, Betty at the Steinbach, that's in the budget as well. So it's 1.5.
You figure we're getting our return on investment with that position? I know we're getting a lot of publicity out there, that's for sure.
Yeah, I believe so. In fact, I think Darren Ham made a really compelling argument in October, and I want to say he brought it again towards the end of the year, but he was showing the sales tax performance compared to Bandera, compared to Hondo, compared to San Antonio, compared to New Braunfels, some of the other places that are actually touristy, if you will, and just about on every metric that you could find, we're performing, and I think that has to have something to do with our the efforts that he's making as far as branding, et cetera. The other thing you may or may not remember is he talked about the last city he worked with in Colorado, and they saw a similar improvement while he was there, but then chose to vacate the position, not get rid of him particularly, but just they did away with the position because they didn't think it was needed. In fact, the whole state of Colorado stopped investing in tourism as a state, and their numbers tanked. His city's numbers tanked, and the state's numbers tanked until they decided to reinvest, put those positions back.
I'm not questioning his capability.
So I think yes.
At all. 'Cause
I think we're good.
I think he's done a great job of getting the word out there. If you're looking at weighing where you spend your money, are there additional services he can give to the city that he may not now be doing as a full-time position there? I'm kind of weighing against, we can't fix our streets, but we put a lot of money out and inviting people in. So I'm trying to get the value for the investment to make sure we do what's best for the citizens now.
Well, I guess my short answer is yes. I believe we are getting the ROI, and I would encourage you to keep there. Anyway, there are other things I would get rid of before I get rid of that position, because in my mind, that's the one that's actually producing additional. It actually has an ROI and it's producing revenue, and will continue to do that. I mean, we're going to continue to build on past efforts, and it appears to be generating at least 1.5 to 2 times what you're putting in. So for every $1 you invest, you're getting $1.50 to $2.
Can you write grants?
Probably not. I mean, but we have other ways to try to get
Maybe you
grants.
can start writing grants.
So our sales tax are,
Yeah,
Is
they're
it-
great,
is that-
and they're not only good; they're good comparatively
Mhm.
compared to other areas. And it's not all Walmart. Like
No.
we saw an improvement of 18 to 24% in just our downtown, like just the small businesses downtown. I think that's
Look at the
direct
activity
correlation.
downtown. You look at the amount of people coming to town, walking around the streets and everything. It's been increasing.
Yeah. Fiorella Fridays made a huge difference.
Okie
A lot
dokie.
of that is, with him, he's
Almost there.
Yep. So this slide here is a balance. So we have a balanced budget. That's what's important here. So we have a proposed revenue of 4.6. With the transfers in, it comes out to 5.127. And then we just talked about expenditures, and that's at 5 million. And so what we have left in excess of revenue is about $48,000. So that's a good thing.
Okay.
So we have a balanced budget. No tax rate increase is what we're going to talk about next, or Scott's going to talk about next. And there's that excess revenue of about $48,000.
You said you were going to get back to Parks and Rec.
Yeah. So right now, Mr. Lee, you had a question on Parks and Rec.
Yes,
he's answering.
Bob.
So as far as
Parks and Rec?
Parks and Rec budget, as far as what we have here, so the overall adopted budget for Parks and Recs is $393,000. And year to date, as of right now, we've already collected about $183,000 of that. So we're about almost 50% collected. We should probably be about 75%, but as Scott mentioned, we're a little bit behind. One of the biggest thing is we put in there this year was the revenue for community, the community building. When that's being built, we thought that would be done already, getting going, but that's not happening. So we're not going to get that revenue that we anticipated for the community center. So
this time last year, when we were building the budget in April and May of 2024, at the time, y'all may remember, again, we were still listening to the USDA, who was telling us, yes, you're good to clear. We're going to be building this building, and none of that happened. But we had already built the budget to bake in potential revenues that aren't going to happen. I'd forgotten about that actually. But so that's one of the reasons our revenues are off is we don't have a building producing it that we thought we were. What else? So the question he had, your answer puzzled me a little bit, because what Bob was asking Councilman Lee was asking is, what is that 333,000? Is that revenue from Parks and Rec? Is that revenue that they bring in? And the answer is yes.
That's correct.
Yeah, but I think you said, I don't know what it sounded like to me. You told him no, but that is revenue. So that 333,000 we have built in Parks and Rec, that's going to be principally three different things. It's going to be your rentals at the park, pavilions, that kind of stuff, pool. So all the pool fees we collect, pool parties, etc., and RV park. Those are the three revenue items that combine to make that 333,000 the park brings in. But that 333 is a real number. Believe it or not, we bring in about that amount of money between those three different things. I think I shared with council this last year, the year before, we accidentally made money in the pool. Pools are usually, they're pits you pour money into, kind of. I mean, they're subsidized. They don't make money generally, but we did accidentally make money where we actually all of our expenses were covered and then some by the revenue. Last year, the year before, or both, I think. This year, maybe not. Well, I mean, again, in the norm for not only our pool, but for most community pools or aquatic centers is that they're losers. They don't pay their own way. You subsidize them because it's something nice for the constituents to have. So we generally aren't trying to we love to break even when it comes to the pool. If we accidentally make money, that's great. But we generally just, for the pool operation, we're just good breaking even if we can do that.
You're right. I have a hard time believing we're making $30,000 a month in revenue from parks. I really have a hard time with that. Could be true. I'm just saying it's just astronomical compared to the past.
Remember the soccer fields?
I do.
They pay a tremendous amount of money.
Well, they pay per player now.
How much? 86,000.
Yeah, it's around 86. The soccer field, the people use the 900 kids, they pay a per participant fee.
I saw that.
And it's like $86,000.
Too bad the ball fields don't.
Well, then we also have the
You wanna go
football.
there, Bob?
Yeah.
You want to go there?
Then we have the football league
Volleyball,
that comes. So, and then we've got no, that's pool. Oh, it's the school. Does the school pay us anything for use of the pool?
Yes, they do, but it's a minor amount.
Yeah.
It's like 4,000, something like that.
Question, how much revenue did you anticipate the community center was going to bring in?
We just lowballed it because we really didn't, his first year, but I still think I put 40,000. And I think this year we backed off on the RV park for next year. And we put only like 3 or 4 months of operating so we were conservative on the new building. I don't remember how much I spitballed it, but 30,000, 35,000 for next year for the
Do you
building.
think as a venue that it will generate 4,000 a month?
Yeah. So one of the things we did when we went through when we were planning the space, we programmed the building and actually started looking at, well, what can you program and what should we anticipate for revenue to offset expense? And all that was done when Devin was still here and getting ready to leave. And then after he left, we continued to use him to help do some of that. So yeah, that's we think is a realistic number. It'll be a nice space, and I think it'll get a lot of use. And there'll be a number of different groups that are going to lease it or rent it or whatever. All right, well, we're going to shift gears because what I wanted, the goal was to present to you the general fund, a proposed budget, which is what you've received. And the goal of staff generally, when we go through this process, is to go do the heavy lifting. We go line by line so you don't have to. Again, not because we don't want to be transparent, but because that's our job, is to go figure out and have the conversations about what our day-to-day expenditures are, where we should see those changes. Are fuel prices going up or going down? What did you think about utilities? What are your utilities doing? We have that level of conversation at the department head level. And they have it with their supervisors. What are its cost of tools, everything, right? And we do all that, and then we crunch the numbers, and then we try to give you a proposed budget that ideally meets your goal of a balanced budget. And that's what we've done. Now, what it doesn't do is it doesn't address everything that the staff requested during that budget process. I can't brag enough on our department heads. You've got I would like to say I could take credit, but I really believe that for the most part, your staff has been the same when I inherited them. I don't think I had that big of an influence on them. They are very frugal, just as a matter of course. We don't go and spend money willy-nilly on things that are not needed. And you can see that reflected in the budget. So it's a pretty tight budget as it is. The things that have been requested that were not funded, I'm going to run through those, but obviously, these aren't ranked by importance or anything else. It's just what was requested is not funded. So for my department, intern position, I would have loved to have had one. Couldn't afford it, took it out. For the city secretary, digitization of the records, I'll be honest, $10,000, that would do a very small amount. I would love to see all of our maps, all the things we're storing upstairs, digitized. In order to do that, $100,000,
130.
yeah, $100,000 to $150,000 to digitize everything. I know that that's probably not. I mean, I would love to see it done. I know it's probably not a high priority for council. So one way to get that done is just to do it in increments. Do it little by little. Get the departments to budget it each year. So for instance, if the public works, get public works to budget some small amount to digitize a portion of their maps, so we can get more and more of that online. And then we can, the physical records, if we have to maintain them, we will maintain them. If we don't, they can be destroyed. We've got the online version that's backed up 5 ways to Sunday, right?
So one question in that process,
Mhm.
do you have to do the digitalization yourself? Or
No, we would outsource that.
No, it's a
Okay,
company.
you're not up there having to.
No, we would outsource it. And the same group that does the record retention, there's a bunch of outfits that do that, right? But they also offer that service. So, go ahead.
I see the benefit in digitization as far as doing research quickly and finding things. I just wondered if you were prioritizing what you digitized. I heard you say maps, and what really matters is the maps that matter today. If there is a pecking order of things, I know the questions come up about old ordinances. Did we do this? Whether that, what's in the books, or do we already have this? And we talked about before. If you guys would look at a prioritization of what's digitized that would maybe best help her or us to do our daily business versus just digitizing.
Right, of course. I think you would have to do that. You would say, if we only had a certain amount of money to start with and we decided to start, then yeah, we would try to start with things that are most important first. And in my mind, that's things that you have to keep that are permanent. So there's employee files. So employee files are basically permanent. For anybody who's ever worked here, what's that?
Court cases are permanent. Police department are 80 years. Some of it's permanent.
So, and if it's 80 years, that's in the same boat for me as permanent kind of. So, I would start with that stuff, the stuff that has to be permanent. And then I would look to see how far does my money go. And if it doesn't go far enough, then I would take from that group and say, okay, now what do we want to get? And for me, it would probably be contracts, personnel files, because there's not that many of them. You can get those done.
Okay, well, I'll bid 20.
Anyway,
so you do twice
yeah.
as much.
All right. So what I want, Bob's got the right idea. What I want y'all to kind of the takeaway for council right now is, I'm thinking about being an auction. I did auctioneering for a what do you call it? A nonprofit. I helped them with their annual
auctioneering stuff, but I'm not an auctioneer. In any case, what I would like y'all to think about is you saw already that we have about 170 days of excess reserves in the general fund. I'm not inviting you to spend all that money today. And if you did, I mean, honestly, like S&P, our rating agencies and others would kind of look at us sideways. Even if we spend it on good things, they don't like to see us spending down fund balance drastically. But that said, you do have money there. And to the degree that you think that some of these things that were not funded in this proposed budget are important and need to be supported, then what I would suggest you do is think about those as one-time expenditures that you may consider funding, and just use your fund balance. And we could do that now or later or whenever you want to do that.
Well, speaking of that, I was just looking, I was looking at what you show as far right now, our current fund balance. And my top number one is the PD one. We need a new detective position because crime's hitting us. Their efforts, I don't know if y'all know, their efforts, their detective and everything worked tirelessly and caught the guy that stole the quickie saw out of the hardware store. So they definitely, the crime is here and it's increasing. We need a canine. We really do. Stuff's happening here. It'd be an asset for us instead of us waiting for them from San Antonio to bring their canine for us to utilize. I agree with the body cams for code enforcement. They come across some scary people. And the Freedom of Information Act requests that they get, well, code enforcement did this to me. This body cam would do a CYA for them. And I want their safety, as well as if it comes up, well, so-and-so said this, we would have the mechanism to back our people.
Sheena, can I ask you a question on that
Yes,
one?
sir.
On that, they have the body cams grouped in with another animal control person shelter. So
Okay.
you would support separating that out into body cams, or would you say both? Because they have them grouped together as,
Well, I'm gonna
That's your body cam.
I'm going to pause y'all real quick because it's a good discussion, but you do and you should distinguish between what are operational expenses and one-time expenses. And so the detective and the canine, as much as I'd like to support our chief as well,
an operation.
those are operational expenses, and I would not recommend one-time money for that.
Right.
That's a discussion that's a little bit larger, and we're going to get into this in a second, which is to Councilman Burrs' request about baking into our budgets street replacement.
Right.
That is a much larger item that you cannot do without increasing your property tax.
Correct.
Essentially, your rate. And I know that you made that comment, I think, Councilman Mers, that you recognized that was the case. The same is true of an increase in positions. If you're going to increase the service area, there's a permanent operational increase by adding a person, et cetera, then that should be offset by a revenue to pay for it, which would be your property tax rate.
Right.
So I want to clarify that.
Yeah.
So your one time would be your camera. Your one time would be,
Oh, the canine, the initial purchase of the canine.
yeah, you could buy the dog, but I'll be honest, you shouldn't buy a dog unless you're going to make the other operational, you're going to commit to the other operational costs associated with that dog.
So if you look at this list here, and you go right down, for example, the digitalization, that's a project that needs to be done. For example, that's not
Right.
an ongoing.
Yeah, that's correct.
Okay.
That's a one time. Yeah.
The Encode cloud-based, are you cloud-based software right now? You really need to be. Okay, you need to move away from your servers and go to cloud-based.
Disagree.
Well, I
Have the cloud base, but keep the server as a backup. If you trust the cloud with your stuff securely, you're an idiot.
is your information, does VC3 back up your information remote on the servers? So it's
Yeah.
backed up remote on the server.
Yeah. So we have current servers are backed up 4 different
All right.
ways.
The street stuff, that's one time, that's tools and equipment, right? Is that what that says?
That's what it says.
It's tools and equipment, so that's a one-time thing.
Where are you? Small tool.
On the
Yeah.
bottom of it.
Yeah.
I'm
Correct.
going down
Yeah.
through your list here.
Yeah.
For
I'm
example,
sorry. I'd lost my
Okay.
place.
Your little things, your park improvements, maintenance, repair, your pool equipment, lifeguard stands, those are not ongoing things. Those are, you're asking for specific projects to do that with. The body cams are one. Anything that deals with a position is an ongoing thing.
Mhm.
Yes, based on what you just were saying.
Correct. Yeah.
Okay, so if you take out the stuff that's not that, then you could pretty much afford a lot of that stuff in what we have, right?
Yeah. Again, this is keep in
I'm
mind.
not arguing that.
Yeah.
I want to get as much as we can.
I appreciate that. And this is what I declare, again, these are the items that were baked into the budget that were scraped out,
Sure,
which is why it's not a lot of money, frankly.
Right.
These were relatively small amounts, with the exception of some of the personnel changes, which did add up to a lot of dollars. But the other thing to keep in mind is this is just a tip of the iceberg as far as things that you all might think of. For instance, I know, like, if you were to go to your Parks Board and say, hey, Parks Board, what improvements would you like to see at the pool? They'll give you a very long list of things that potentially cost $500,000.
right.
So this comes down to, what are your priorities as council? It's not just about, funding what the staff had requested, but are these things of a high enough priority that you want to go spend your one-time cash on, that once you spend it, it's gone? And then next question is, are there things that are not on this list that the council thinks are higher priority, that really your one-time money should be spent on that instead?
Well, I'll take my first stab at that. First off, I'll agree with David. We got to have a street replacement program. We've got to, okay, because they're just going over and over and over. But the other side of the coin, which I'm going to bring up as far as the maintenance, we have to do our maintenance on our drainage. I mean, we have to clean our bar ditches. We got to do these things. I mean, so that's a maintenance thing. I understand that. That's an ongoing thing. It needs to be done on a regular basis and not wait for the next flooding, or not wait for years before we wait for a contractor to do it. That's my opinion. We need to get more active in the street maintenance program on those things. Throw that out.
The items that were covered in the previous budget workshop that were the druthers of those particular departments, are any of them in here?
The druthers,
The things they said, we want to do this. I mean, some may be.
that was, remember, on the PowerPoint slides that were presented? I don't think so, right?
These ones?
Yeah. So that's the other thing to be advised of, is this was just these are just the items that were scraped out of the proposed budget. There's a list of other things that were in addition to, that some of the departments said, yeah, if we had more money, more than what we're trying to do right now, here's other things that we would do. Those, for the most part, those are not listed here.
I would like to see everything that's being proposed, thought about, dreamt of in one place, so we can pick and choose what it is that we're interested in supporting. Because you're telling me now, I got this list over here and it's not here. I got this list now, and then there's a list that we may have. And so I got these three lists that are general fund kind of stuff, but none of them are together.
Well, and the reason this is here is because even if you look at it this way, department heads, when they built their budgets, they put in the things that are the should do's, the things they really felt like were needed. And then I took that and I massaged it to get where we are today. The like to haves, and again, these are things they should, in some cases, should do as well. That was on a separate list that didn't get baked into the budget. So that's why you see these listed and those not, is these were items that were originally in the budget that got pulled out. And you have a list, you have that same PowerPoint. You have a list of the other things. I can put them all in one place for you, yes, but you have both.
I guess I wonder if councils would like to see that list
But
before the next budget meeting we have, and then we can take a few minutes and because we're trying to pare this down, and right now there's a lot of competing things that we don't see them all right here.
the department heads made up the old list and the new list.
Yes.
So if they put it on the current list, that means that these were more important than the stuff that was.
And that's what I'm generally saying. They built their budgets and they had items built into their budgets, and these are the items that got scraped out.
Because I remember John.
Separate and apart from that, they built if I had more money, here's what my list would be. So you could say that they didn't really create this list. I did it from what they from what their budget request was. Their normal everyday, here's my budget, sir, request, right?
Yeah, because I remember Jonah 6 months, a year ago, came and said, listen, we really don't need this truck. We thought we did, but we need this one. So, priorities change.
Right.
And you don't remember that? There was a piece of equipment or something that was on the list. And you said, really? We find out we didn't need that. We really need this. And now you remember.
Yes.
Yeah, see, I remember.
I think it was the loader,
Yeah.
versus the vehicle.
Yeah. So I think it might confuse things if we bring back the old list, because the department heads are the ones that said, well, really, these are more important than the stuff on the old list, at least in my mind.
So I didn't see anything here like building maintenance for this building, nothing on here. And, I've got others like covering up the pumps, the heater pumps at the pool. They're out in the open. They got plastic pipes on them. Not good. Everything can hit them and rain on them. They need to be at least covered with something, and that kind of thing. And so I'm going, when do we insert those into this process? Since tonight, I'm talking about the general fund.
Now's as good a time as any. If you've got the idea of,
I didn't prepare for that because we weren't asked that question.
I understand. So one of the questions for council is, we didn't get, I also didn't provide a great amount of detail, right? This is purposely high level. The estimates are estimates, in brackets, because really this is about understanding from the council. One, are you interested in trying to spend some of your fund balance to do some one-time things? And then if so, what might those things be? And could it be any of these items on the list, with the idea that we aren't trying to make a decision today because we don't have enough information. You don't have enough information to make the decision today. I couldn't tell you, for instance, on the Encode cloud-based software, that is a very, very rough estimate, and I would estimate it's low based on my personal experience. I think it's more like double that number, if not quadruple that number, because it's either 24 or 50,000 to make that, depending on what you choose. I've been through that process before in another city. In any case, it's more about understanding what it is council would like to see invested in. And that would include, and this is what I was trying to say, that includes not just the items the staff has brought forward today and previously, but any other items like you're mentioning, Councilman Lee, that you think are important, right, and need to be addressed.
I think, to take your lead, and of course, the council's got to decide this, not necessarily state a number, but have a number in mind about how much they're willing to commit towards from the reserve funds, and then identify things that are one-time deals or special projects, not with ongoing maintenance issues like personnel or things like that, like you were talking about, and use those to get the most bang for your buck for that, whether it be a list of 50 items or whatever the case may be, to get things off the table, so to speak, and get it done and move on.
Hey, Mayor,
Sir,
you keep mentioning spending money out of the reserve funds for these other projects.
and that's what I may have used the phrases wrong, but yes, sir.
Well, are we saying that we have committed all of the projected income on things already?
That's the
And
way,
only thing we have left is what's on these lists and what else we come up with, and we're gonna use reserve monies for that?
well, the way I'm looking at this, what's proposed to us utilizes all the revenues. What has been, did I say it correctly? Short of $48,000.
And I just, 48,000.
What is proposed?
Yeah, 48,000, I don't want to, but that's kind of a rounding error. I mean,
Right.
and all I mean that is that it's such a small percentage of the overall budget that if we're wrong anywhere, that money could disappear, right? And so I don't.
Okay, so
hang
lack
your hat
of a
on
better
that.
term, for what's
Yeah.
been proposed to us is a balanced budget.
Right.
And then, but we have the opportunity with that much 292 days in reserves to
Grow it.
to use a third of that, for example, up to a third, not necessarily the third, but up to that, to get some things done and off the plate.
Correct.
I guess
And I think we need to decide that.
I didn't
think
know
we
we'd
can
already
do it.
committed to spend all of our revenue on things.
We just said a third.
We didn't, commit to the,
Well,
what's been proposed to us.
Okay, there might be just a misunderstanding of what we're saying. General fund reserves, when they're called general fund reserves, that's just the term you give to the cash that's not committed. So it's not been committed. It's excess reserve funds that are from the general fund. Okay, let's make sure you understand that. Okay.
I didn't know that we had settled on expenditures with the incoming revenue on general fund projects already. I thought that's why we were here tonight.
So that's fine.
Is that not the case?
I'm sorry, sir.
I thought, I wasn't aware, I'm never aware,
Okay,
that we had not committed the projected income on department needs already, and we're dealing with something other than that now. I don't remember agreeing to anything that's been proposed so far.
I don't think anybody has. I think is we're still in the discussion phase of this, but what's been proposed to us is a budget that meets the needs of the city and is balanced. And then these other things are proposed on top of it.
Correct. Yeah, you could go back and say, you know what, we want to relook at our services, the number of police officers we have, the number of services we offer as a city, and you could make changes to your budget, your budget in a million different ways, right?
Right.
But what we try to do is make a few assumptions, and this goes back to the conversation we had 3 months ago about how we're approaching the budget. But we're going to make the assumption that you want to keep the services you have today. So things like, again, tourism, you talked about the ROI on tourism. Well, I'm going to make an assumption that you want to keep that position. That we're going to continue to have a library, that we're going to, that we're going to have all the services we currently have, and then I'm going to try and figure out what it would cost to deliver those same services at the same level that we have today next year, ideally. And I mean, I don't.
I'll take a
believe
little
you're
bit
actually
about
getting
that. I'll take a little bit of heat on that too, if there's a question, because Scott and I talked, and I said, what I'd like to present to the council is a needs-based budget. This is what we need. This is where it is. Balance it as much as you can, and then we can talk about anything else. Like Scott said, if you don't agree with what's proposed as the needs, then let's go back and change certain needs in certain areas. Am I right?
Right, exactly, and
we go from
that's this council's prerogative.
So, but what's been proposed is a basic needs.
But when I came on council 10 years ago, I remember the first budget thing. Council was arguing about, well, the library says they need 5 reams of paper. Do they really need 5 reams of paper? And they were second guessing staff
Right.
about what staff knew they needed to buy to run their department. So it's when we come to all today, which it sounds like the mayor's in agreement with, is let staff tell us what it is to just function as we are. And then, but if there's some changes, if you want to do away with one department or reduce services or increase services, then staff will come back and tell us how that's going to affect budget.
Well, there are 2 big parts to this. So we spent some time. That's right. We spent some time on these one-time purchases. I mean, there's some services in there. There's the police officer and the canine that we mentioned before. There's the animal services tech that we've mentioned. Those are service level adjustments. Those are improvements. Those are additional service beyond what you have today. Those would come at some kind of rate increase. In addition to that, not to be excluded is the council requested items, the streets overlay and maintenance.
Right.
And the streets replacement. These are 2 items that were in the CIP. And the request was put those into the budget. Obviously, we couldn't do that, not without offsetting revenue. One of the things I wanted to again, this is just kind of gives you some overall picture. Here's the health of the general fund. We talked about this earlier, but that's how you get to 292 days is just kind of doing some basic math. Your cash and investments, the cash on hand that you have that's not committed to something else. So for instance, you have about $446,000 of general fund reserves that is your interest income that has been committed to the city hall project. So that doesn't show up here, but it shows up in your audit. That's money that the council could uncommit if they wanted to, but I just want to be transparent. That's there. But this number does not include that. And then you take your total operating cost. That's your proposed budget, the one that we just showed you. You divide by 365, that gives you your daily costs, and then you just divide that into the amount you have on hand, and that tells you how many days you have. So that's how we got to that number. The other thing I kind of wanted to talk about at a high level was kind of where you are with property taxes. And this is going to feed into that discussion about, well, do we raise the rate or not? There's some unknowns. I'm waiting on, we still didn't get that answer, right? From Melissa? Okay. So there was something I was hoping to have by today, but it just didn't get here. We work with the county tax office, and this is a very, 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 very busy time for them. So there's some information I'm waiting on from them to be able to further inform you all about your tax limits. Because we basically, what we're doing when we take this INS rate and this, anyway, upper right is your property values, 345,206,183. That's the, I thought it was 375. 345?
375.
Oh, this is current, sorry. That's your current certified value. The next year, it'll go to 375.
Correct.
So what happens when those certified values increase? If you do nothing, if you don't change anything,
Rate goes down.
your tax rate will automatically go down, right? Because your values went up. Now, you all have already agreed to a notice of intent to issue some debt, and the idea was to keep the tax rate flat. So we would issue in the general fund, it would actually be combination revenue and tax certificates of obligation. We would issue the amount that would keep the rate at 0.5233, which has been our historic rate for the last several years. It was the rate in 2019, and it's been in the rate since 21, 22, 23, 24, and now 25.
So the tax levy would increase by slightly over 10.
No.
Or the tax levy would increase, but the tax rate would stay the same.
Tax rate would stay flat. So this is kind of what that looks like, right? So your proposed tax rate would be and we'll get into more detail when we do the tax public hearings. We're going to have tax rate public hearings. As we get more information from council and what y'all are wanting to do, we'll prepare the public pieces that will be shared. But so there's a bunch of question marks on here, right? Because these are the things we don't know yet. I don't know, for instance, what your INS rate will be next year yet. I need the calculus to show me that. But I know that it's probably going to be north of 17 cents because that's where it is right now. So it's probably going to be 18, 19, 20 cents.
Can I ask you a question on and I just for discussion purposes, as the valuation goes up, the tax rate comes down, but the IAS, the interest sinking part, the debt service, it's the biggest chunk. And I'm just asking you a question on this. As you issue COs to keep that rate up, don't you by default start reducing the O&M as the INS gets bigger?
That is exactly correct.
So
In fact,
the O&M, the available tax rate for things like general fund expenditures actually goes down.
and that's kind of
Less
what
revenue.
so that's what I was trying to show you here. So for instance, if we looked at the old rates, if you look at Alsatian Oaks and their development agreement, for instance,
Sure.
the rate that you were charging at the time was something like 47 or 48 cents. That was your tax rate. That was your O&M tax rate because your INS rate was 3 cents
Right.
back in whatever that was, 2017 or however long it was. By design, on purpose, in coordination with our financial advisor and the support of the city council, your staff has been working to leverage the new development to raise this INS rate because that's the one thing that they don't get a pass from. We get the full freight of their INS rate, that INS portion. So it behooves us in some ways as taxpayers to have the highest INS rate we can. But if we're going to maintain the overall rate flat, then what's the sacrifice? What's the trade-off? Well, it's that operation and maintenance.
What's paying our bills is we're getting less revenue for that
And the reason we've been able to get away with it,
because the increased sales tax.
sales tax.
Because the increased sales
Yeah.
tax.
And that's why that position I think is incredibly important right now because we have seen an ROI to that tourism position. So all this didn't happen by accident. I mean, it was a design and a plan that was laid out and presented to council and supported by council to get us to where we are. But where we are right now, if we're looking at this next year, And we just talked about wanting to put in some items into the general fund, bake them in, so to speak. If you said, well, we want to do more than just, we're going to issue some debt to go do some things. So let's build that water well and potentially do city hall, potentially do library, potentially build a new police station. Y'all are still kind of deciding which of those you're going to try to do. In addition to that, we want to be able to do these other things, and it's going to take a tax rate increase to do those. You're going to be limited by what the state will allow you, the maximum rate. And that's why I'm saying there's some question marks here. So we already know that your INS rate is going to be it's going to be higher than the 17 cents. I don't know where it'll be, but it very easily could be in the 20-cent range after you issue this debt. If you keep the overall rate at 0.5233, you don't make any changes, that'll bring your operations and maintenance rate down to whatever that is, the difference, 31 cents or something. Now, keep in mind, rates are going up, values are going up. So even though your rate comes down, you're still going to get basically the same amount of money in the operation and maintenance account. Even though your rate went down, the amount of money you get will be the same. The state allows you 3%. On the operation and maintenance side, they allow you to capture 3% or increase by 3% without a vote, without any kind of action in the public. But beyond that, if you go beyond that, then you're going to have potential for an election.
Subject to rollback.
Right. And it's not automatically at 3%. That's what I'm saying. I'm waiting to see what that rate would be so I can tell you all, if you're really interested in this, here's what it would do. And this would be only for operations. Keep in mind, if you're going to do a capital project like streets or something else, I know that the mayor and I differ on our opinions of this, but my advice to you would be things like that are capital expenditures that can be amortized over 20 years. That should be a debt issue that pays for that. But things that are operational costs, so again, a new K-9, I'm not picking on the chief, but new K-9, new officer, new detective, new animal services officer, those are all operational increases. Those should be supported in the operations and maintenance tax rate or offset by sales tax, right? Like if you had more sales tax coming in than you thought, and certainly you're going to have a lot of commercial in Alsatian Oaks. You're going to have even more commercial in, I forget the name of the guy that's constructing over by Circle K by the bank, but you can see his buildings going up. All of that's going to produce additional revenue for the city. So your sales tax will increase. It may not be next year, but certainly the year after that. The other thing to keep in mind is when you look at like our value increase, it's an increase of 30 million, 345 to 375. That's with a very, very, very small fraction of the new homes that we're expecting. That's only whatever it is. There's 90 houses capturing all that 90 value. I mean, I don't know how many houses it is. I'll get you the number as far as how many it is and what the total is, but there is whatever it is, 800 more homes in Alsatian Oaks that are coming, 500 in Flat Creek, 120 or 30 in Alsatian Heights, more in Country Village. We're seeing this amount of increase just with a small drop, if you will, a small percentage of the homes have been built. You're going to see a tidal wave of potential new value to be able to issue additional debt in the future, keep the rate, or even actually in the future, you'll be able to drop the rate and still issue debt and go do things like we talked about, build a new library, build a new police station, what have you, and do that really at the expense of the new development. So that's new paying for that. I wanted to show you a couple other things, and then I'm done with my presentation and we can talk some more. But I wanted to give you an idea. Just again, this is stuff for you to put in the back of your mind. This is how we compare to Medina County as far as our current tax rate. There are basically it's half of the communities are over 50 cents. Of those, we're the lowest. And then half the communities are below 50 cents. Hondo's at 48. Natalia's at 47, so they're kind of pretty close to where we are.
The three that are lowest have significant sales tax revenues.
Yeah, I don't know how Lytle's
is.
is.
The two that are higher than us don't have electric or gas utilities.
That's an excellent point.
Okay, so I just
Mayor,
balance them out.
this is kind of apples and oranges. Unless everything was equal with all these cities, these figures don't really mean a
I
lot.
understand.
But
The only reason I
it's
share
an
them is
idea.
because some councils say, well, what are the other rates?
Who cares?
So it's good to know. Well, some
But
people
you're
do,
right,
Bob.
there are a lot of people that want to know, well, how do I compare with my neighbor?
Right.
And it's a valid.
You're weird. I don't know.
But I
I'll tell
can
you.
just give you. some of the-
Most councils want to know how does our tax rate compare to everybody else in
Yes,
town?
sir.
But if you don't care, that's fine.
Oh, it's important
My
information.
question is, how much would we, if we went up, you can go up to 3, but not beyond with that election, right?
No,
No.
it's 3 you could do. Between 3 and
Yeah,
7.9
okay.
is a public hearing, 8 election
So out
potential.
of the.
I think you're right. I honestly don't know that.
Out of your ample gray matter, if we went up 2%, what would that mean to us financially?
Well, what I was going to show you is pennies. So in terms of actually whole pennies, this is what you produce. It's about $24,000.
Out of
So-
the entire city's asset, not the city's assets, but out of.
Out of our tax base, if you were to raise your tax rate by a penny, you're going to produce about $24,000 in extra revenue. So it comes down to, what are you trying to fund? If you're trying to fund, and the reason I show this kind of stuff is, like, let's say you have $124,000 worth of, that's not good. 240,000, that makes it easy. $240,000 worth of operational expense on an annualized basis that you're trying to cover. Well, now you know that's 10 cents. You'd have to be able to go up 10 cents.
Yeah, I was going to say a 2% would be about that number.
Yeah.
3% would be about that number.
Yeah, it's not a lot.
The 24?
Yep.
Well, it's plain as the nose on my face that we definitely have a need in order to continue to support infrastructure and everything else to have the funds to do that without necessarily spending everything out of our, not everything out of our emergency funds. I would float the idea that we consider asking the mayor what's on his mind.
Did you have some things you want to talk about?
I was just going to say that
Looks like he ate the canary.
David, please.
No, yeah.
Go ahead, David.
I was going to say that I'm kind of there with Mr. Lee. I think that we need to have a discussion about potentially raising the tax rate in order to cover the cost of the infrastructure we have. Now, one way that might happen is that if the council agrees, we put it in the budget and we send it to an election. If they say no, then we don't pave the streets.
That's blackmail.
Well, I mean,
Let's try it.
no, it says
Yes.
you have a vote. Do you want to pay to have it?
Well, I mean,
The
they say,
money
let's
has
see,
to
you're
come
spending
from
$500,000
somewhere.
on the park and library, but.
We should finish in 10 minutes, so you'll have some time between
We
each
need to-
meeting.
It's worth discussing.
Yeah, well, one thing to remember is that, one of the reasons that we get such a little benefit for property tax revenues per increase is because we have so many people that are
Old?
military disabled, which affects the property tax, and also the old, as I think Bob said. The what?
We have an over 65 exemption.
So that affects where we have. Now, the one thing is, no, I'm not in favor of kicking the can down the road. But if this, and I really do believe that our property tax and sales tax revenues are going to really increase. In the next 12 months, look how many new stores are going to be coming in that are all going to give us 2/3 sales tax benefit. It's going to be tremendous. And we have the additional property taxes that are going to be going up. So if I don't have a problem with using this surplus in our, in the general fund to make it through this year with some of these priorities, and then work rapid, knowing that next year we're going to wrap it into the budget as an ongoing O&M type thing. Because I do think that one thing people really don't like, unless we're just desperate, I don't think it benefits us raising property taxes, because again, these people who are retired, and we've all sat here, and there is, a valid thing in their argument that, they're all fixed income and every little bit's going to really affect them. And they're getting, so I think, that's something to keep in mind as we go along. We are going to we're not stagnant. We're going to get an increase in revenues next year and the year after And if we can use this reserve fund now to kick it off this year and then pick that up in additional revenue.
Just so you know,
On the same
something,
note with that,
Yeah.
I thank you, because I think it is really important that we use those funds, we do some things, and then it makes it easier if you have to do something else down the road, because you're showing some real progress on some things that we've maybe kicked the can or put on the shelf or whatever. I don't know if it makes any sense.
I want to make two comments. One, just specific to streets. I've included in my report, I think I included our previous report about working with the county. It's something I've been working with for a while. As you all know, Commissioner Sitter had some health issues recently. He's in the clear and looking great. I saw him the other day. He has restated his willingness to support the city. And basically what I brought him is a plan to chip seal
Right.
2 miles of road
Okay.
in Castroville, and to try to do that on a more consistent basis. The fact of the matter is, we aren't going to be able to do like a long-term agreement where he does 2 miles of road every year, because it ultimately falls to the commissioner's court to approve those as an interlocal agreement, a project. But we would pay for their services to do it, so it's not like we're getting it for free. That said, he expressed his willingness to continue to support that. I need to set up a meeting with the county attorney to get that drawn up. But it sounds like that is going to move forward. So there will be some roads that will be done with the assistance of the county here very soon. The other thing I was going to mention is when we were talking about kind of estimating, forecasting that value that's coming, I have provided some information to our financial advisor for him to help me create a forecast that will tell you, here's what you can look at as far as future values and future capacity to issue debt, and then what that per capita debt would look like. So you have an idea of what that is, keeping in mind that all of that is an estimate. It's a forecast, so it's obviously not going to be, it's going to be wrong. It'll be close, but it'll be wrong, either up or down. But I'm working on that so that I can give you the idea. I want to give you all as much information as we can, so as you're looking to the future, you can start to kind of create a strategy and a plan for here's where we are this year, next year, and in future years to try and address some of these systemic issues, because it's a systemic issue. And it's not one that just this city faces. Most small towns do not have enough money to fix the infrastructure that they currently have,
Right.
whether that's streets or water or sewer, it's all the same, or buildings.
Well, when you start talking streets too, they're not all the same. You take the streets, I'm going to pick on them. River Bluff, they need to be taken down to subgrade and reconstructed. Take this street right out here. I've said it before, and I'll say it again. Last time it was reconstructed was in the early 80s.
Mhm.
This road right here in front of you, it needs some patchwork, it needs some surface work, but the foundation is solid.
Yeah, you could chip seal it and it'd be fine.
Is solid, but they're not all like that. So different degrees around town with different things.
Go ahead, Bob.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Assuming you did not have this ample reserve, would you be looking for a tax rate increase to fund these other things that many of which appear to me to need to be funded? Okay, because you're betting on a windfall to do something that really continues forever. Okay, the maintenance and all the rest of that. I mean, I've heard this story many times that you're betting on something that the taxpayers own, essentially the windfall. But if you're saying I can take care of it, and then later I'll end up having to raise the tax rate because my windfall's gone now, and so I'm saying fiscally, it seems to me to make more sense to go ahead and make that incremental adjustment, because every other expenses everybody else has is all going out. Everybody's not going, you know what? We used to charge us this with the airplane ticket. I think we'll still charge them that just because they don't have the money anymore. That's not realistic. And so if it depending on the impact per person with I'm just picking 2% out, I think we're fully justified in taking the money to invest in the city's infrastructure, which is primarily what it is.
Well, I do want to clarify, just to make sure you all understand, if we keep the rate flat at 0.5233, if your total tax rate value goes up, your taxes are going up. Even if we kept the rate flat, you're paying more in taxes
I
because your value went up. Now, if you're over 65 in Castroville, you're frozen.
Thank you.
Your value is frozen. You don't pay anymore. So there's a lot of benefits to.
Nice.
We're going to be in the minority pretty soon because you got all this development coming out here.
Right. All right. I just wanted to clarify that.
And we're dying
Okay.
off.
David and then Sheena, and then we got to wrap
I
up.
don't want to cut anybody short. This has been a great conversation.
Yeah, we got to start wrapping up.
But we need to start wrapping this up because we got a regular meeting coming at 6. But what I'd like to do before we do this, we're going to do this again on the 22nd.
This month?
Yes.
Yes.
Are you okay?
I'm trying to check my calendar.
I know.
Is it going to be at the same time?
3:30 again on the
I think I
22nd.
can do that.
Okay, do this again on the 22nd at 3:30. And Scott, I'm sorry, I don't know if we got what you wanted to get. This is a lot of good conversation, a good thing from there. I would suggest and encourage Bob, you have department things you want to talk about. We could revisit any of those things, but overall, I don't know if there's a big objection to what we have, and then we can work from there. Not finalizing anything, it's just moving forward to the next step.
Yeah, I added up everything, and I round up significantly because that's how I was taught. It's better to overestimate than underestimate. And the grand total to include both versions of the streets comes out to 1.6 million.
Yeah.
And so if we deduct that from fund balance, just saying, and this includes people, everything, would bring us down to 2.4 million. So we're still.
Yeah, I don't know if we want to
Oh, yeah.
do that, because that's, like Scott was talking about, you
Oh,
got to be careful with your bond rating, spinning it down too fast.
Oh, yeah.
Well, and you don't want to
But-
cover operation costs with one-time money.
Right.
Right.
But I'm just, some of these things,
But some things we want to look at, and maybe Scott, you can come back with us
Yeah.
with
yeah,
with
drainage.
some ideas on, I'm going to throw a number out, $1 million. Sir,
I'd like to know what it is that you want from us, things to do in general fund that may not be covered from the unfunded. Now, I think if I could summarize it, everything is built in the budget with numbers you showed us, the things they wanted, but you've already settled on that, and the only unsettled is the unfunded and any other druthers we might bring, correct?
yes,
Things that wanted some
right,
what's in these last,
yes.
That's correct. To put it in one space from I'll kind of get you a little better numbers. Cost priors, if you were to seriously consider them, you'll have a better idea what it might cost. I'm going to share with
Check that stuff. Call me, let me know, or better go to Scott. But if you want to talk to me about it, why I think something, then please let me know, and we can talk it over. Because you guys get to make the decision. I'm just here helping.
So the next
Okay.
meeting will be about enterprise.
Yeah.
I expect the majority of the enterprise discussion more than likely will be centered on gas. It's a new utility for us, so we'll spend some time on that. Everything else, I hope to be able to do what I did today and bring you what I call a balanced budget with no rate increase, where we keep the rates flat.
That's what we're working on.
That's what we're working on.
Yes, sir. Okay. Anybody else have any questions? Okay. If not, you make me a motion to adjourn this meeting.
I do.
Good. Second. Good. All in favor? But the time,
30.
you're asking me again on the time. 5:33. Done.
Absolutely.
The five is actually right here.
This stopped on me twice. So if someone calls, it stops.
Yeah,